Hello sunshine, welcome to another question and answer video where I show you real-time footage of me painting while I answer some of your burning questions. Like my previous Q&A videos, the footage you're seeing is all in real time, but I did edit out portions of when I'm mixing colors or just staring at the canvas, things like that where nothing's actually happening. So in reality, this piece took closer to 3 hours to complete, but what you're seeing here is about an hour. I actually had a bunch of leftover questions from my previous round of Q&A that I didn't get to include, so I will be answering some of those in today's video. And then I also had asked over on my YouTube community tab for some new questions as well. And if you don't see your question answered in this video, there's probably a good chance I may have answered a similar question already in the other Q&A videos, or I may actually already have a dedicated video on the topic that you asked about, things such as growing your social media as an artist, how to find your art style, etc. Those kinds of the topics, I already have videos on them, so I will have all those things linked in the description. So before we get started, I would like to talk a little bit about this piece that I'm working on in today's video. For this painting, I am working on a wood panel that I've primed with gesso, and I'm painting with acrylic gouache. And then later on, you'll see that I also end up adding some cute glitter stars for a fun finishing touch, which is actually a callback to some portraits I did in a similar style back in 2017. And if you want to know more about my actual acrylic gouache painting process or the materials that I use in today's video, I will have all of that listed in the description down below as well. All right, so now with that out of the way, let's move on to the questions. And like my other videos, the first half will be kind of more art-related questions, and then the second half of the video will be more like fun, pop culture, silly questions. So first question, what's a day in your life like? What does it consist of? So most of my days vary quite a bit depending on what needs to get done. So some days I will spend most of it painting. Other days I'll spend spend my time editing a video or doing a voiceover. Then there's days that I have to dedicate to fulfilling and packing up shop orders. Of course, some days I'll be doing all three. I don't have like a set structure. I know some people have a very strict schedule of what their day looks like, but yeah, for me, I'm kind of all over the place. Sometimes I'll work all day from morning till night. Sometimes I'll take an evening off to unwind. But basically, how I work out my life is in my bullet journal, I'll write down the things that need to get done in the week. And then I just sort of divvy up the tasks depending on what is priority and what I can kind of wait to do until the end of the week or something. It's super unorganized and kind of chaotic, but that's just the way that I am right now. And yeah, hopefully one of these days I'll try to have a more regimented schedule for myself, because that will probably be a lot easier. Next question, what music do you listen to when painting, or do you paint in silence? I definitely prefer to listen to something while I paint. I pretty much only work in silence when I'm answering emails, or if I'm doing like a voiceover for a video, or if I have like a really bad headache. That being said, I don't have like a specific type of music reserved for painting. I will just listen to whatever I'm in the mood for that day or that point in time. So the past month or so, I have been listening to the Hamilton soundtrack a lot. I'm definitely now on that Hamilton train because the filmed version of it was released on Disney Plus. And this is so cheesy, but I have now nearly perfected how to sing and rap satisfied, and I feel very accomplished about it. Mind you, I'm not a good singer like whatsoever, but I can actually do it, and it's very fun. And I've also really been digging the new album Ungodly Hour by Chloe X Halle. It's got such a cool and sultry vibe to it. I've been really enjoying it. So shout out to some of my followers on Instagram who recommended it to me in my live streams. What underrated Instagram artists would you recommend for us to check out? There are so many artists to choose from. I follow so many great people on Instagram and on YouTube. So I won't talk about them individually because we'll just be here forever. So I'll just show them on screen for you guys, and I'll have their Instagram pages linked in the description. And I definitely recommend you guys check them out. Next question. What's your normal Instagram posting schedule for when you're working? I'm not super strict when it comes to particular days of when I post to Instagram. I know some people say that they don't post on the weekend or whatever, but generally I just try to aim for 2 to 3 posts a week. Of course, that doesn't always happen, but that's kind of what I have in mind week to week. How to have a constant theme or how to make your feed look consistent. For me, this is actually something that I don't find myself thinking about too much. For me, I find that my Instagram feed naturally has a cohesive look to it because I almost always photograph my artwork in a lay flat format. And I also pretty much use the same set of random knickknacks that I include in the photos depending on which ones fit the piece, such as, little fake flowers, gems, and of course the art supplies that were used in the painting. And then I also have, I think, 3 or 4 kind of large pieces of colored paper that I kind of rotate between as well. And so because of those kinds of consistencies, overall my work and my feed just looks that way naturally. And I think because my work is very, very colorful, that's what my feed looks like. And so it's not something that I'm consciously thinking about when I'm posting an individual thing. I'm not thinking about what it's going to look like in the feed overall. But if I randomly, decide I want to work in black and white, or if I want to post a digital illustration, that's, those are types of things that are typically a little bit different from what I normally do, then I just will do it. I don't think it's something that we should be overly concerned about how, something's going to look amongst the overall feed. I think that the key element to keep in mind is that you should always present your work with clarity. So, things like poor lighting, skewed angles, photos taken too far away, these types of things will really hinder the overall look of your feed. But I think that, having different styles or different color schemes or whatever it is, I don't think that is something that you should be overly concerned about. How do you keep motivation with posting on Instagram when the algorithm doesn't favor artists, especially the current algorithm? I've been seeing a lot of artists of varying audience sizes express their frustration with the Instagram algorithm, which of course I absolutely understand. It is very disheartening when you work so hard on a piece and only, 10% or less of your following is seeing it on their feed. But that being said, I've seen, artists who have over 500,000 followers say that. I've seen people who have, a couple thousand followers say that. So it's something that is happening with everyone, at least almost everyone. And yeah, I've definitely noticed that even though my following has grown significantly, the amount of likes I receive has actually decreased, which of course, it's a bummer. It sucks. But I also don't think it's very productive to constantly complain about something that I cannot control. So I find myself paying less and less attention to the number of likes or trying to figure out this constantly changing algorithm. Of course, occasionally I will look at the likes, but I try not to give so much significant weight to it because that's what makes it so disappointing. But rather I focus on the positive interactions and comments that I do receive on the post. So basically what I'm trying to say is pay more attention to the positives rather than the negatives. Do you recommend building up a following before starting YouTube? Do you have any tips or ideas of where to start? So I myself did have a following on Instagram before I made the jump to YouTube, but Honestly, I don't think it's absolutely necessary. There's so many artists that I follow who have much larger audiences on YouTube than they do on Instagram. And I think the reason for that is because it's easier to get discovered on YouTube. I had assumed that the majority of my YouTube audience would have just been people who were following me on Instagram when I first launched. But I very quickly noticed that a lot of people were finding me on YouTube first. So, to put it into perspective, I have been actively posting my artwork on Instagram for nearly 5 years or so. And then YouTube, I have been posting videos for like a year and a half. And you know what's really crazy? I have almost the same amount of followers on Instagram as I do subscribers on YouTube. The growth here has just so much potential to grow really, really fast in comparison to Instagram. And then to address the second part of your question of where to start with your YouTube channel, I would say to think about what kinds of videos you like to watch and then what you specifically can offer your audience. So for me, I really enjoyed art videos that felt personable and had voiceovers. And then I also thought about the fact that I am an artist that really likes to dabble in many different mediums. And so that was something that I knew I could show to people. And then my ultimate advice for starting a YouTube channel is make the videos you want to make and you will enjoy doing. Of course, it's important to note what your audience likes to see, but if someone requests you to make a video that, just doesn't pique your interest, then don't feel obligated to do it just because someone asked. Because making YouTube videos is a lot of work. And if you're not interested or not passionate about whatever the content is that you're making, the process of it will just be dreadful. So just really stick to your guns so that both, I think, your audience will understand and see how passionate you are about whatever it is that you're making, and then also in turn will help you continue to enjoy the process of it. I want to start making videos of my art, but I have a habit of turning the page a lot. Any advice on how to draw without flipping the page all around but still keep the quality of the art the way that I want it? Yes. This is actually the bane of my YouTube existence. I too actually prefer to turn my page a lot when I paint and draw. I also have a habit of hunching over and putting my face really close to the surface as well. And so I have to consciously prevent myself from doing those things when I film for YouTube. Filming my painting and drawing process is kind of like a ball and chain, to be honest. You have to actively change the way you approach your creative process. This is why I mainly do portraits when I film for YouTube, because I know it's something that I'm very, very comfortable with. For example, when I did the Cafe Witches illustration, that illustration was not only larger than I normally work, but also involved 2 characters in a setting with a background, and I was filming it. It was so stressful. And so that is why when I did this recent gouache illustration a couple months ago, I purposely did not film it because I didn't want the act of filming it to hinder the outcome of the actual piece. But for some actual tips, to try and prevent myself from rotating the piece, sometimes I'll use masking tape or chunks of a kneadable eraser to force the position of my sketchbook or whatever to stay in one orientation. So for example, this wood panel has little pieces of kneadable eraser under it so that it didn't move. Another option is to not constantly be filming. So to use this particular piece as an example again, I knew specifically when I was going to do the line art for the earrings, I was going to be turning or wanting to turn the canvas around a lot. And so for that portion of the process, I stopped filming so that I could do that. And so that's another way of trying to get around the video having you turning the page all the time. But yeah, unfortunately, there's not really any foolproof solution to this. It's something that you just have to kind of accept / get used to. How do you overcome the feeling of being unmotivated? What helped you get past it and get back to making art? So I touched upon this a little bit in my recent jelly gouache video, but most of the time, if I'm feeling really unmotivated, I just have to force myself to work. Basically, I kind of put myself into a mindset of putting a fire under my ass. Like, I know if I stop creating more artwork to sell in my shop, or if I stop making YouTube videos, that directly affects my income. And so that will directly affect my means to pay for bills and for food. I have to continue keeping up the momentum because my livelihood depends on it. Of course, that is the very dramatic way of looking at it, but it is technically true. And of course, by the way, I do have savings and things, so don't worry guys, I'm not actually in a do or die situation necessarily. But I couldn't just stop making content for 2 months because that would really hinder my way of life. And then the other tactic that I do is to take baby steps. So sometimes, even if I'm not necessarily in the mood to create artwork, but I know I need to, I'll start out small, like sketch something in my sketchbook or something that doesn't feel like it requires too much effort or thought. And then from there, you can work your way into something more involved like painting. Kind of like you're easing yourself back into it rather than just like jumping into it full force. And I think this is the reason why so many artists do warm-up sketches at the start of their day, which it's kind of like the equivalent of doing stretches before someone works out or does yoga. Not that I can relate to that specifically. What advice do you have for pursuing a career in art? Also, what's your shoe size? All right, so that's a really tough question because there are so many different fields within a creative art career. You can be a gallery artist, you can be an independent content creator like me, or you can be a graphic designer in a studio. It's like there's just so many different things. But I guess the ultimate advice that would apply for most types of artistic endeavors is that, unfortunately, half of your energy is going to be spent not actually creating artwork. Choosing to have your art practice be a career means you are also going to have to look at it as a business. So yeah, so much of my time is spent doing other things such as answering emails, doing research on potential new products, editing YouTube videos, packing up shop orders, etc., etc. And so that is something worth keeping in mind, is just preparing yourself for the fact that being an artist doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to paint 24/7. Oh, and my shoe size is typically a 7.5. How do you overcome the fear of a blank piece of paper or expensive paper? I typically like to sketch and plan out a lot of my illustrations digitally first. That way I can be as messy as I want without any fear. And then when I'm happy with the sketch and the colors I've picked, I can print out the sketch and transfer it onto paper or whatever surface it is. So yeah, for paper, I'll use a light box, and then for wood panels and canvases, I'll use the graphite paper method. If you could have any art supply in the world, no budget, what would it be? So you guys probably know I've tried out a lot of different supplies already. So for me, the first thing that comes to mind with this question is I would love to have every single color of the whole bean acrylic gouache. It is by far my favorite gouache, but of course they can get a little pricey, and so that would be the dream if I could just have every single color that they offer. Some people say there is a market for every style of art, but it's often not the case. How do you come up with art ideas that sell? Do you consider that while designing a new piece, or do you just create whatever you are inspired to make? For me, it's definitely the latter. If I only made artwork with other people's interests in mind, that would take away all of the joy that I feel when I paint and draw. It would become a chore, which ultimately would make being an artist basically redundant for me. You know, if I wanted to make a living off of something that felt monotonous, I would have picked a much more stable and predictable office job or something. You know, I feel like just choosing to pursue art is very difficult. And so you should only pursue it if you are truly passionate about it. And so, yeah, that being said, the artwork that I create is always going to be based on things that I'm interested in and that I'm personally inspired by. It's just the reason I'm an artist in the first place. And then thankfully other people, you know, seem to enjoy my work in return. And I think that people tend to gravitate towards artists who seem genuine and passionate about what they're doing. And so I definitely recommend following your heart on that. Do you have any tips for focusing on the art process rather than worrying about the end result? I would say to try and get yourself into the mindset of, even if the final result is not what you hope it's going to be, the effort and energy you're putting in will ultimately serve you in the long road anyways. Practice is key in becoming a better artist, so any time you put into your craft is time well spent. Do you have any coloring tricks or ways to come up with color schemes? Do you have any favorite color combos? Like I mentioned earlier, I often plan out my sketches and colors digitally, so that helps me to explore different color combinations until I'm satisfied with what I'm seeing. And then for favorite color combos, I really love pink, blue, and purple together. How are you feeling about Drawtober this year? Like every year, I am both nervous and excited because I have a bad habit of putting a lot of pressure on myself, and it can be kind of stressful, but I also tend to produce some of my best work during that month, so it's something that I definitely look forward to. Are you making your own prompt list, and can we follow along? Yes. Well, it's not going to be a very unique prompt, but I have decided that my theme this year will be horoscope signs. It's always been a series I've been interested in tackling, so I figured this was a great excuse to finally do it. And so, yeah, that technically means I'm only going to be doing 12, which I think will take off some of the stress, and it'll allow me to spend more time and energy on each piece rather than, it's quality over quantity this year for me. Also, of course, if anyone wants to join me, I'd be happy to have you. I think, similar to previous years, I'll probably make an official post with a unique hashtag so that we can kind of build a little, community together and share each other's work. Do you ever find that trying new art supplies all the time overwhelming? I've seen some artists start to feel like getting the art supply subscription boxes or trying to keep up with art supply trends overpowering from what they initially wanted to do and then taper off from that. What's your thoughts on that whole scenario? So for me, I thankfully actually enjoy using lots of different mediums. So switching from watercolors to gouache to markers, it's not unusual for me. And it's something that I would do even when I didn't have a YouTube channel. I think that what can get tiring is when people request I review specific brands or products that I don't have, or for me to tell them, what's the best beginner medium, or what's the best product for this, or what's the best price for this medium, or those kinds of questions. At the end of the day, I'm just one person who has limited time and resources. I cannot possibly know what is going to be the best of anything because I have not tried everything. I also cannot tell you what is or isn't a good price because prices and shipping costs vary by country and everyone's budget and situation is going to be different. And yeah, creating artwork is such an individual and personal thing that's going to be different from person to person. And so one person might really, really love this set of gouache and then another person might hate it. And it probably has nothing to do with the actual quality of the paints. It's just people have different ways and methods of working. And so those kinds of questions get pretty tiring, to be honest. Would you recommend people who want a career in art study art in school or keep it as a hobby? Is college a waste of time in your opinion? So this is another question that really varies on the person. I think I'll probably make a video dedicated to this topic because I think there's a lot that can be said. But the short answer is that you definitely don't have to go to art school to become a successful artist. But depending on the type of learner you are, it may be very beneficial. When I look at other artists who are successful right now, some of them are self-taught. Some of them went to school. Some of them went to school and then dropped out. Everyone's path and needs are going to be different. It's not a one size fits all journey. If you've seen my 15-year art journey video, you'll probably know that I went to school for graphic design, but ultimately became an independent illustrator instead. And I kind of went through a lot of different mindsets during those years. And so, some people learn and thrive better in a structured environment that school would have for you. Some people are very self-driven and can learn and educate themselves on their own. And thankfully, we do live in an age where you can teach yourself almost anything from the internet. But you have to be incredibly self-disciplined and dedicated to be able to teach yourself everything on your own. Because for me, when I was, in my late teens and early 20s, I was not in a position to be teaching myself anything. And so being in school gave me structure. I had teachers that would, tell us exactly what we needed to know. They would give us assignments, we'd have critiques, and it forced me to work because there would be deadlines and I actually was working towards something. Whereas if I was not going to school, then I probably just would have spent most of my time trying to make friends and partying and whatever. And so again, this is just based on my individual experience. You might be someone who doesn't need school to have that structure. So yeah, really depends on the person. If you didn't draw girls as your main focus in art, what would you draw? I mean, I guess I would draw guys or non-binary people. Ultimately, I just really enjoy drawing portraits and people, and so that's what I would do. Was it weird having people you know in real life following you and seeing your posts and videos? How do you get over that? Yeah, I mean, it can get a little weird, especially when I draw like spicy demon girls or gush about fictional anime boyfriends. But my Instagram and YouTube is pretty much all art related. And so when you come upon my channel or my Instagram page, you know what to expect. You know what I'm presenting. And so it's totally optional for people who know me in real life to follow or consume it. If they have no interest in it, they're definitely not obligated to consume that content. And so generally I kind of don't think about it too much. And I think that only a small handful of people I know in real life actually watch my YouTube channel, as far as I know. So yeah, not a big deal. What is your inspiration for drawing original characters? A lot of my inspiration stems from my interest in fashion, makeup, beauty trends, and just general pop culture. I especially love nostalgic things from the 90s and early 2000s. What are some things that you dislike from the art community? How much time do you have? Just kidding. But obviously, the big one is theft and blatant copying. That's a big one. But the other thing that bothers me is when people want to project their own agenda upon your art practice. We as artists are choosing to create work that we are passionate about and what speaks to us personally. And then we happen to share it on the internet for other people to enjoy for free most of the time. Unfortunately, some people feel entitled to tell other people what they should or shouldn't draw. This is something that I, and I'm sure many other artists have experienced when someone comments things such as, you have same face syndrome, or you should get out of your comfort zone, or why don't you draw, insert whatever subject matter. If you are not specifically commissioning this artist, they are not obligated to follow your personal preferences. If you are interested in something specific, then go find an artist that suits your interests rather than just trying to mold someone else into what you want from them. There's such a wide array of artists out there for probably every niche you can think of. And so why not use that energy to go and support and find those kinds of artists that suit your interests better, rather than harassing somebody else who's just trying to live their best life. Do you think that art created by those in the online art community, particularly those who specialize in drawing pretty women, are inclusive of all types of beauty? Why or why not? I would definitely say that it depends on what artist that you are following. I personally have made an effort to diversify the content creators that I follow on Instagram. That way, when I open my Instagram feed, I am seeing art from many different perspectives. I say content creators because not only do I follow some great inclusive and body positive illustrators, but I also make a point to follow inclusive and body positive beauty/lifestyle Instagrams as well. I will happily include a few of my favorite body positive and inclusive artists here on the video, and I will have them linked in the description as well. What are the top 5 books, shows, movies, games, etc. that you think have influenced your art the most? All right, so this is a tricky question because I always have a hard time narrowing down my answers for these, but if I had to pick my top 5, pop culture influences on my artwork specifically, it would be Sailor Moon, Cardcaptor Sakura, Hayao Miyazaki films. Please don't make me pick one. There's too many. And then similarly, animated Disney films from the 90s specifically. So, the Disney Renaissance. And then lastly, Alice in Wonderland, the novel. Yeah, I think those are the things that have really stuck with me and really influenced the art that I make today. If you had a story with characters, what would be the genre? This is actually a really interesting question. I've never really thought about that since I don't actually have any original characters, but I think it would probably involve some kind of magic, so I guess it would be fantasy-based in some way. Have you ever tried cosplaying? If you haven't, which character would you cosplay as? If you guys saw my Instagram stories earlier this week, you might have seen that I shared a few Halloween costumes that I've done over the years. And so, yeah, basically for me, Halloween is a time to do some light cosplaying. And so in the past, I have been Spinelli from Recess, Raven from Teen Titans, and San from Princess Mononoke. Oh, and I don't think this technically counts as a cosplay, but I also went as Kimchi, the drag queen, last year. Blocking my eyebrows and doing that makeup was so fun. And I still have that pink wig. I have no other uses for it, but it was very, very fun to have baby pink hair for the evening. Never draw again or never listen to music again. I mean, probably unsurprising, no questions asked, I would have to give up music. If I could never draw again, I would be left with nothing. Being an illustrator is like most of my identity. How is life in Toronto with and without this pandemic? Life in Toronto is very expensive, but very vibrant. In the before times, things that I enjoyed about Toronto was that it's a very lively city. There's always, lots of concerts, festivals, markets, events, just things always happening all the time. And I also really love the wide selection of cuisine and restaurants to choose from. There's always something to do. The major downside to being in a dense city is that public transit can be a total nightmare. And generally, it's just a very loud city to live in. But yeah, that being said, during a pandemic, being in close proximity to a lot of people is definitely more challenging. During the height of it, there were always really long lineups to get into the grocery stores, drugstores, any essential business. And Now things are calming down and more businesses have opened and there isn't crazy lineups, but schools are going to be opening soon. And so basically I'm just bracing myself to see what kind of impact that's going to have. But yeah, I have been very thankful to be able to work from home a lot and not have to go outside for the most part. What do you think the world is going to be like after all this is happening right now? Honestly, I really don't know, but things will definitely be different. They have to be different. This pandemic has really revealed so many flaws in the way that our lives are structured. And so I really hope that we can all get through this and come out on the other side better and stronger. Ooh, that got a little heavy. Let's move on to something a little lighter. So next question is, what music from your childhood have you been revisiting this quarantine? So, quarantine or not, I am always ready for a nostalgic kick. So my favorites are late 90s and early 2000s pop and R&B. I literally have a playlist of all these things that, it's like Spice Girls, Aaliyah, Destiny's Child, all the favorites from that era. I'm such a 90s kid, so that music, that era was definitely something very, very fun and nostalgic for me. What countries would you like to visit if given the chance? I think I might have answered this before, but yeah, when traveling is an option again, I would love to visit Japan. I hear that the Ghibli theme park is underway, so you best believe I'm going to want to check that out. And another thing is this gigantic, 5-story art supply store that I keep hearing about. I forget what it's called, but it looks freaking magical. 3 things you would bring on a deserted island. I'm going to go real practical and say a good tent, a knife, and some matches. That being said, I think I would probably fare very poorly on a deserted island. I have only been camping once and it was with very experienced campers. So if I were left to my own devices, I would probably perish. Although, yeah, now I'm thinking about that Daniel Radcliffe movie, Swiss Army Man, where he literally plays a dead person. It is both unsettling and kind of endearing. If you've seen this movie, you know what I mean. It's incredibly bizarre, but very entertaining. Would you rather time travel or teleport? Oh, definitely teleport. I love going to new places, but I hate the actual commuting element of it. If I didn't have to take a long bus ride or an airplane and go through customs to get to places, that would be the absolute dream. And yeah, time travel kind of freaks me out. There are so many possibilities of it going wrong, and I just don't like the unpredictability of it. Great and entertaining concepts for movies and TV though, but for me personally, I would definitely rather teleport. Would you rather be blind, deaf, or mute? This one, as an illustrator, of course, I would not want to be blind. So I feel like I would really miss music and sounds, so I guess I would have to pick being mute. I would, I'd just get one of those devices that allow you to type out what you want to say and it vocalizes for you, I think, and I could pick a fun voice. That would be my best bet, I think. If you had to lose a finger, which one would you pick? My right hand is my dominant hand, as you can probably tell from this video. So I would have to lose my left pinky finger. I barely use my pinky fingers for anything, so it probably wouldn't make a huge difference. If the sky wasn't blue, what color should it be? I'm thinking like a soft lilac or lavender. I think the nice thing about the color blue, especially the sky, is that it's very calming and easy on the eyes. So I think that purple would be the best alternative. What's your favorite guilty pleasure show? Disney Channel originals, like That's So Raven, Hannah Montana. Those are definitely guilty pleasure shows for me. I was like obsessed with those shows in high school, even though I think I was technically a little older than their targeted demographic. And you best believe when they did that big crossover on The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, I was so living for that. What is your favorite forest? Categories: tropical, subtropical, and temperate. I think if I had to pick, I would actually go with temperate. I hate excessive, constant humidity, and someone who has lived their whole life in Canada, looking at these photos of temperate forests, it feels very familiar and comforting. And I think something that I really love about having all 4 seasons is the changing colors of the leaves every autumn. One of the many reasons why it's my favorite season. What's your favorite type of frog? Admittedly, I'm not super familiar with frog types. However, I recently came across this headline that there was a discovery of this frog that looks just like Kermit the Frog, which I think is so adorable. So officially, this is my favorite frog. Do you have any juicy high school stories? Not at all. My high school life was very boring. For that juicy teen drama, I avidly watched The OC and lived vicariously through them. But one funny thing that does come to mind is that during my senior year, there was a massive food fight in the cafeteria. I thankfully did not have to endure it at all because I spent a lot of my lunches in the art classroom. Favorite childhood movie/TV show? I mean, definitely all the influences I mentioned earlier, but if I had to pick something different, I would say I really love Space Jam. It's one of those things where it's such an outlandish concept, and yet it totally worked, and to this day brings me so much joy. It's just like so goofy and fun, and I love the pairing of the 2D animation with live action. If Detective Pikachu was done in that format, I might have actually watched it. Favorite Shrek movie? This question genuinely made me laugh out loud. I have to admit, I haven't seen all of the Shrek movies. Like, I haven't seen like the Christmas special and things like that. I've definitely seen the first 3 for sure. But if I had to pick one, I think it has to be the first one. It's like a total pop culture staple. But I do remember coming across a YouTube video essay a while back where the guy talked about how Shrek 2 was the best film sequel of all time, which was a fascinating watch. And when I came across this question, I was like, I want to watch that again. Favorite anime/anime character? Favorite anime for sure is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which I actually just rewatched recently, and it's as phenomenal as ever. As for favorite anime character, that is too tough. There's too many to choose from, so I'm going to skip that question. Who's your favorite Avatar: The Last Airbender character? It's gotta be my boy Sokka. I just relate to him the most. The feeling of being ordinary or inferior compared to your peers, but eventually finding unique and inventive ways to give yourself value. Oh, that just hit home for me. But of course, Zuko is a very close second. His story arc and character development is unmatched. And then Azula is a very close third because she's crazy and I love her. What's your favorite episode of Sailor Moon? I admit it's been a while since I've watched Sailor Moon, but I think for me, the most impactful and memorable episode for me is the finale of the first season. I remember being so shook, seeing all of the Sailor Scouts basically die one by one, and then Sailor Moon, has to face Queen Beryl by herself, and it's like snowy tundra, and then at the end, all the Sailor Scouts manifest themselves and they help her defeat evil. Yes, girl power. Yes, power of friendship. Oh, it just completely and totally encapsulates why I love that series so much and why it's so iconic. What type of fictional character do you gravitate towards the most? I always find myself liking the old, wise, and heartwarming characters the most, like Uncle Iroh and Gandalf. I freaking love that. I think that is such a healthy and admirable type of character to gravitate towards because they're like almost like role models. I think overall, when I evaluate the characters I tend to favor, there's like two camps. The one camp is like snarky characters that have a little bit of attitude, but deep down they're actually not as awful as you think. You know, like hard on the outside, softy on the inside, like Greed / Ling in Full Metal Alchemist or Bakugo in My Hero Academia. And then the second camp is characters that are the epitome of drama and extra, and yet are somehow incredibly endearing. Like Tamaki in Ouran High School Host Club, Jackie on That 70s Show, or Klaus in The Umbrella Academy. These types of characters, they're just like so selfish and self-absorbed, and yet somehow very adorable and super entertaining. Do you think the Dabi is a Todoroki theory is true or not? All right. So for those of you who don't understand this question, this is in reference to the anime / manga My Hero Academia, and there is a theory that Dabi, who is a villain with a mysterious identity, could possibly be a member of the Todoroki family who believes that one of the brothers / son to be dead. So, I recently have been reading the manga, and I do really like this theory. If you have only watched the anime and not the manga, then you might want to skip ahead a little bit if you don't want spoilers. And if you don't know the series at all, you might want to skip ahead because this might be completely useless to you. So, of course, I think the fact that Dabi has a quirk that is fire-based is one clue. The other clue is that we don't exactly know how Toya died, and Dabi is presumably not his real name, and there seems to be no record of his identity, so that's interesting. The next clue, I think, is that in Dabi's fight with Hawks, he knew Hawk's real name, which seems to not have been public knowledge. And this makes me think that perhaps Endeavor had enrolled or enlisted Toya / Dabi to be brought up as a hero at a young age in the same way that Hawks was. And maybe during that time in some kind of early mission or training, something happens to Toya / Dabi, and then, you know, they think he died, but in reality he didn't, and became some kind of weird experiment, which would explain his appearance and loss of a actual, you know, his formal identity. I wouldn't put it past them to do some, you know, dirty, shady stuff like that, considering what lengths that Hawks had to go through as a double agent. Anyways, that's the end of my hypothetical theory on that. I've never actually looked into other people's theories. This is just based off of my own reading. And so if you have other clues or things you want to discuss, let me know in the comments. It's a very fun theory. I love chatting theories on stuff. If you had to choose one and only one fictional boyfriend, who would it be? You know how to ask the hard questions, because I'm sure a lot of you know I had a lot of fictional boyfriends in high school. But if I had to pick one, I think it would have to be Howl from Howl's Moving Castle. Like, who wouldn't want a beautiful wizard boyfriend? Like, he just, you know, whips up Sophie a new home, an entire flower garden. Like, yes, please, sign me up. Also, I just realized Howl totally fits the character description I talked about earlier about me favoring, you know, super extra dramatic type characters. Howl is the epitome of extra and drama. So, just so ridiculous. I love it. What is your favorite Netflix series? All right, so right now I think it's a tie between Never Have I Ever and The Umbrella Academy. Two very different shows. Never Have I Ever I binged in one sitting and then proceeded to watch it a second time like a couple weeks later because I loved it so much. I don't know if I've ever experienced such a strong roller coaster of emotions in one sitting. As for The Umbrella Academy, I mean, I just finished the second season and I just loved it. What a great ensemble cast and just super fun concept. What's a new show, anime, or cartoon you've been watching or thinking of watching? So right now I'm slowly trying to watch Netflix's She-Ra since so many of you guys have recommended it to me. I feel like I like the idea of it more than I actually like watching it. I really don't know why. Everything about it seems right up my alley, but For some reason, I'm having a really hard time feeling invested in any of the characters or the story. Like, I really want to love it, but it's just not capturing my attention the way that I thought it would. But I gotta say, I do really like Ketra. I like the 2-colored eyes, and she's real spunky. The next thing on my list is the anime Demon Slayer, which is another show that you guys have recommended to me, and I see so much fan art for it floating around, and yeah, the character designs look really cute, so I'll be checking that one out at some point. What movies are you excited for that are coming out within the new year? Usually I'm really terrible with keeping track or being up to date with new movie releases, but I will say I'm pretty excited for the new Wonder Woman movie. I really liked the first one, and the second one just looks super fun. I like that it takes place in the 80s, and I really liked the first trailer, but I do admit that I think the second trailer or the newest one revealed too much. I kind of prefer trailers when they're a bit more vague so it doesn't ruin the experience when you actually see the movie, but we'll see. I'm excited for it either way. Do you like Cheetos? If so, what type of Cheeto is your favorite? Yes, I am strictly a crunchy Cheeto gal. So satisfying. And last question, favorite crystal? I think crystals are so cool. I definitely am not an expert by any means, but I really love opals, which I don't know if that technically is a crystal, but rather it's a gemstone. But in any case, I think they're really beautiful, and it just so happens to be my birthstone as well. And that brings us to the end of the video. Sorry if I didn't get to answer your question. I do have some here that I'll save for the next round. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you found my answers entertaining in some way, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!